Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the Book of Amos,
Yeah.
which is a prophetic book in the Hebrew Bible that
Right.
maybe some folks haven't looked at as deeply as some of the other books.
Right.
But it's got a lot of really powerful messages.
It does.
And so we're going to be looking at excerpts from the World English Bible Translation that you've provided.
Yeah. The Book of Amos is often overlooked, I think,
Yeah.
but it really speaks to themes that are so relevant today, like social justice
Right.
and hypocrisy,
Mm.
and really makes you think about how we're living our own lives even thousands of years later.
Yeah, it really does. So, okay, just to set the stage a little bit,
Uh-huh.
the book is set during the reigns of King Uzziah of Judah and King Jeroboam II of Israel.
Right.
And this was like a time of outward prosperity,
Yeah.
but also a lot of internal corruption.
Hmm.
So things look good on the surface.
Yeah, it was a period of economic growth
Yeah.
and military strength, but underneath there was a lot of social injustice.
Yeah, and that's where Amos comes in.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about Amos.
Yeah, so Amos wasn't a priest or a king or anything like that. He was actually a shepherd
Oh, interesting.
and also grew sycamore figs.
Ah, okay.
So not someone you'd necessarily expect to be delivering these fiery speeches.
Right, yeah, not like a big important guy or anything.
Yeah, but he has this powerful encounter with God, this vision,
Yeah.
and it leaves him to speak truth to power,
Mm-hmm.
calling out injustice wherever he sees it.
So he's not afraid to say what needs to be said.
No, not at all.
And one of the things that struck me is that he doesn't just start with Israel. He starts by going after all these other nations around them.
Yeah, he goes on a bit of a world tour of judgment.
It does kind of feel like that.
You know, you got Damascus,
Yeah.
Gaza, Tyre, Edom, Ammon, Moab.
It's like he's got this whole list and he's just going down it.
Yeah, he's got this list of grievances.
Yeah.
And each nation is condemned for specific actions.
Right.
But there's this bigger idea here
What is
that Amos is getting at, and that's that there's this universal standard of right and wrong,
interesting?
that it's not just about my God is better than your God.
Right.
It's about there's a moral code
Yeah.
that applies to everyone, no matter where you're from.
That's so interesting because you see that idea kind of popping up in different ways throughout history.
Absolutely.
Like we have international courts now
Yeah.
and the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Right.
It almost feels like Amos was ahead of his time in a way.
He was definitely challenging the norms
Yeah.
of his society.
So he's called out all these other nations. Now he's going to turn his attention to his own people.
Right. First to Judah and then to Israel.
And that's where things get really interesting.
It does, because he doesn't hold back.
Yeah, he's really laying it on the line.
So Judah and Israel are both in the hot seat, but for different reasons.
Okay, so what's the deal with Judah? What are they doing wrong?
Well, their big problem is that they've abandoned God's laws,
Okay.
and they're following after false idols.
So they're kind of like going after other gods.
Yeah, think of it as like a spiritual infidelity.
Ooh, it's a good way to put it.
They've strayed from their relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not just about their actions, but like what's going on in their hearts.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's Judah. Now what about Israel? What are they doing?
With Israel, it's more about how they're treating each other.
Okay.
So we're talking about oppression of the poor,
Mm-hmm.
denying justice to the needy,
Okay.
exploiting young women.
Wow. Okay, so it's like social injustice is the big problem here.
Yeah, he describes it really vividly. At one point, he says that the rich are trampling the heads of the poor into the dust of the earth.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
Yeah.
And it's not just that they're being bad people.
Right.
There's this whole element of hypocrisy.
So they're like pretending to be good while doing all this bad stuff?
Exactly. Amos is furious that they're going through the motions of religious rituals and sacrifices while completely ignoring the suffering around them.
So it's like checking off the boxes on your to-do list, but not actually living out your faith.
Exactly. He's saying true worship should be about justice and compassion,
Right.
not just empty gestures.
It makes you wonder if we do similar things today.
Yeah,
Like maybe we donate to charity, but then we ignore the problems in our own communities.
a good question to ask ourselves.
So Amos is not pulling any punches here.
Nope.
He's really calling them out, and it doesn't sound like he's very optimistic about what's going to happen if they don't change.
That's right. He's got some pretty dire warnings.
Okay, so what happens if they don't listen? What's the consequence of all this bad behavior?
Well, Amos is pretty blunt. He talks about exile, famine, military defeat,
Wow.
total societal collapse.
It's like the whole thing is going to fall
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, it's like the social fabric is rotting from the inside out.
And you know, it's interesting because this echoes that actual earthquake that's mentioned at the very start of the book.
Right.
It's almost like their world is literally falling apart
Yeah,
because they've abandoned what's right.
it's a powerful image for sure.
It is, and it makes you think about, what are the consequences of our own actions
Mm-hmm.
if we're not living up to what we know is right?
Right. Are we contributing to the breakdown of
Yeah,
society in some way?
those are some tough questions.
They are, but they're important ones to ask
Yeah, I think so too.
because Amos's message is still relevant today.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a challenge to all of us
Mhm.
to live lives of justice and compassion.
So what happens next?
So that's what we're going to find out
Yeah,
in the next part of our deep dive.
right, because so far it's been a lot of judgment and doom.
Yeah,
But is there any hope?
there is.
Okay, good.
But it comes with a catch.
Okay, well, I can't wait to hear more about that.
We'll delve into that next time.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so we've heard a lot about judgment and, kind of doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But is there any hope in Amos? Does it ever get better?
Oh, there is definitely hope.
Okay.
But it's not a free pass.
Okay.
It's conditional.
So it's not enough to just sit around and wait for God to fix everything.
No.
They have to do something too.
Exactly. They have to do their part.
Okay, so what does that look like? What do they have to do?
Well, in chapter 5, Amos says, seek me and you will live.
Okay.
But then he gets really specific. He says, don't seek Bethel, nor enter into Gilgal, and don't pass to Beersheba.
Okay, so these were all major religious centers back then.
Right.
So why is he telling them not to go to these holy places?
Well, he's saying that their rituals and their pilgrimages have become empty.
Okay.
They've lost their connection to the true meaning of their faith.
So it's like going through the motions,
Exactly.
but not really believing.
Right. It's like he's saying, you're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah.
You're missing the point.
Totally.
He wants them to turn inward,
Okay.
to find that genuine relationship with God,
Right.
not just blindly follow traditions.
Yeah, it's about the heart, not just the actions.
Exactly. And he uses this amazing imagery to drive this point home. He says, seek him that maketh the 7 stars and Orion, and turneth the shadow of death into the morning, and maketh the day dark with night.
Wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's like he's reminding them of just how powerful God is.
Right. He's the one behind the whole universe.
Yeah.
And this cosmic perspective really informs his call for justice.
So how does that connect?
Well, he goes on to say, let judgment run down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream.
Okay, so it's not just a suggestion, it's like a demand.
It's a demand for real change in their society.
Okay, so what does that change look like? What specifically does he want them to do differently?
Well, he calls out those who trample on the poor, those who take from him taxes of wheat, those who afflict the just, who take a bribe, and turn aside the poor in the gate from their right.
So it's about protecting the vulnerable, making sure things are fair,
Right.
upholding the law.
He's saying you can't just build fancy houses and vineyards while ignoring the suffering of your own people.
Yeah, you can't just enjoy your wealth
Right.
while other people are struggling.
It's a hollow victory.
So even though things seem pretty bleak,
Yeah.
he does offer this glimpse of a brighter future.
He does.
Right.
In chapter 9, he talks about this time when the plowman shall overtake the reaper and the treader of grapes. Him that soweth seed, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt.
It sounds so idyllic.
It does.
Abundant and prosperity for everyone.
Yeah, it's a beautiful vision of restoration.
But like you said before, there's a catch.
This vision only comes true if they turn away from their wickedness
Okay.
and start living justly and compassionately.
So it's a choice they have to make.
Right. It's not about passively waiting for God to magically fix things.
Yeah, they have to work for it.
They have to earn that restoration.
That brings up an interesting point.
What's that?
This idea of punishment from a loving God.
It's a tough concept.
It is.
It's hard to reconcile those two things sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you hear about all the harsh judgments that Amos is describing.
It can seem like a contradiction.
It really can.
But I think it's important to remember that Amos is speaking from a specific cultural and historical context.
Okay.
The language of punishment might sound harsh to us today,
Right.
but back then it was seen as a natural consequence of straying from God's path.
So it's not like God is being vengeful.
No.
It's more about there being real consequences
Exactly.
for our actions.
It's about waking people up to the seriousness of the situation.
like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
And it's about highlighting that we have a choice.
Right. We can choose to continue down a destructive path,
Yeah.
or we can choose to change to align ourselves with what's right.
And that choice has real consequences.
Yes, both for ourselves and for the world around us.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about those like vivid descriptions of devastation that Amos uses? Are those meant to be taken literally?
I think it's helpful to think of them as metaphors.
Okay.
They're designed to shake people out of their complacency.
Right, to get their attention.
Yeah. Exactly. Make them really feel the weight of their choices.
To show them how high the stakes are.
So it's not so much about predicting the future as it is about kind of like grabbing them by the shoulders and saying, hey, wake up.
Exactly.
Pay attention.
This is
important.
And even within those warnings, there's a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Remember that image of the plumb line in chapter 7?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So God says to Amos, "Behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people, Israel. I will not again pass by them anymore."
Okay, but what does that even mean? What's so special about a plumb line?
Well, a plumb line is a tool that builders use.
Oh, okay.
To make sure that things are straight, perfectly vertical.
Right.
So in this context, it represents God's standard of righteousness and justice.
So by saying, I will not again pass by them anymore, it's like he's saying,
I'm watching.
I'm holding you accountable.
Right. I'm holding you to a higher standard.
So it's not about abandonment.
No.
It's about like raising the bar.
Yeah. It's like tough love.
Yeah.
God isn't giving up on them.
He just wants them to be better.
He's calling them to live up to their potential.
And, you know, that's a message that I think speaks to us today as well.
Absolutely.
Like, this isn't just ancient history.
Okay.
Like, it feels so relevant to what's going on in the world today.
It transcends time and place.
It does.
He's speaking to the human condition.
Yeah.
To our tendency to stray from what's right.
Yeah.
To get caught up in our own self-interest.
Right. To forget about others.
Exactly.
But he's also offering a way back.
He is.
A path towards justice and restoration.
Right.
So how do we take these ancient words and apply them to our modern lives?
That's the big question, isn't it?
That is the question.
And that's what we're going to explore in part 3.
Okay.
We'll delve into some practical steps we can take.
I like it.
To embody Amos's message in our own lives.
Yeah.
To become agents of change in our communities.
Yes.
And in the world around us.
So we've spent all this time with Amos and his warnings and his calls for justice and these little glimpses of hope.
Yeah.
But I guess now we have to ask, like, what does it all mean for us? You know,
right.
Today in the world that we live in, how do we actually take these ancient teachings and like live them out in our modern world?
It's a big question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world, like climate change and political divisions and all the problems that we're facing.
It can feel really overwhelming.
It can, and it's tempting to just kind of throw up your hands and say, like, what difference can I possibly make?
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
But Amos offered some kind of like antidote to that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Like a way to push back against that feeling of helplessness.
Yeah. Remember that plumb line image?
Yeah.
It's a reminder that God is paying attention, that he's holding us to a higher standard.
Right. So we're not just supposed to sit around and hope that things get better.
No.
We have to actually like do something.
Right. We have to be part of the solution.
And I guess that starts with us, right? Like looking at ourselves, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Amos challenges us to examine our own lives, to see where we might be contributing to the problem, even unintentionally.
That's where it gets tough.
Yeah.
It's easier to blame like the system or other people than to ask ourselves, like, am I part of this?
It's not always comfortable, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
Amos pushes us to ask, do my actions actually line up with my values? Am I turning a blind eye to injustice that's happening around me?
Yeah.
Could I be doing more to make a difference?
Okay, so step 1, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
But then how do we go from that self-reflection to actually doing something?
Well, Amos gives us some pretty concrete examples. He condemns those who exploit the poor, those who deny justice, those who abuse their power.
Right.
He's saying that caring for the vulnerable, upholding fairness, these are essential parts of living a righteous life.
But sometimes those problems just feel so big, like so systemic. You know, what can one person really do?
Right. It's easy to feel like a drop in the ocean.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Even small acts of justice and compassion can ripple outward.
They can.
Yeah, it starts with paying attention.
Okay.
Educating yourself about the issues, listening to the stories of those who are marginalized.
So first we open our eyes and our ears.
Right.
Then what?
Then find your lane.
Yeah.
You know, what are you passionate about?
Okay.
What skills and resources do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're a great writer who can raise awareness through storytelling,
Yeah.
or maybe you're good at organizing and you can mobilize people to take action.
Right.
Maybe you're someone who just connects with people really easily and you can build bridges across divides.
I love that. So it's like we all have something unique to contribute.
Right.
Even if it seems small.
Yeah. Find what you're good at and use it for good.
You know, Amos wasn't just about individual actions.
No.
Right. He wanted to see like real systemic change.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to work on multiple levels. Personal, interpersonal, and systemic.
So what does that look like?
That means advocating for policies that promote fairness and equality.
Mm-hmm.
It means supporting candidates who champion justice.
Yeah.
It means holding our leaders accountable.
Right.
It also means having those tough conversations with family and friends.
Ooh, yeah. Those can be hard.
Yeah, they can be, but they're important.
How do we do that? Like, what's the best way to approach those conversations?
Well, I think the key is to lead with empathy and respect.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that change doesn't happen overnight.
Right?
You're not going to convince someone with one conversation.
Yeah.
Meet people where they are, share information, and be patient.
And I guess most importantly, be a good example yourself.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words.
It's easy to get discouraged, though. You know, when you see how much needs to change and like how slow progress can be.
It can be exhausting.
It can. So how do we keep from burning out?
Well, find your community.
Okay.
Connect with other people who share your values and passions. Share your struggles, celebrate victories together, and remember that you're not alone in this fight.
There's strength in numbers.
Exactly. And don't forget to take care of yourself.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, rest, recharge, and nurture your own spirit. You know?
Yeah, we need that.
We need that hope to fuel this work.
It's easy to get so focused on the problems that we forget to take care of ourselves and each other.
Right. And here's something else that Amos reminds us.
Okay, what's that?
True worship isn't about empty rituals.
Right.
It's about living justly and compassionately.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say that this work of justice is itself a form of worship.
I like that.
It's a way of aligning our lives with what God cares about most.
It's not about checking boxes. It's
Okay.
about like really embodying love and justice in the world.
Exactly. And that's the lasting power of Amos's message.
Yeah.
He pushes us to be better, to confront injustice, and to be the change we want to see in the world.
Yeah, it's a powerful message, and it's one that I think we need to hear now more than ever. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to leave you with one question.
Okay.
What's one thing you can do differently, even a small thing, after exploring the Book of Amos with us today? Remember, even a single drop can contribute to a powerful river of change.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.